Hi folks, we're Tassless today, your pushback channel. Thank you for joining this audio live stream. Please listen to this presentation as you would a radio broadcast. In this essay, I'd like to talk about the general issue of declining standards, non-equal application of the law, and the many dispensations that are made for the unwanted, unneeded mass migrants that are being brought into the West by the globalist cabal without the agreement, permission, or the vote of the local citizenry. Now, just recently there was a video done by a British politician, and he was talking about the issue of fare evasion in London's public transport, the trains there in London, and it was a pretty pathetic video. He looked like some little snot-nosed teenage kid at high school running around as a hall monitor, finger wagging people, and he looked like someone who had no perception of reality and no authority and looked quite childish, if not stupid. And I'm sure if he hadn't had security there, he would have found a rather unpleasant outcome. But now, just for much to my annoyance, anyway, I looked at it, he only confronted white people who are by far and away the minority of fare evaders. He didn't confront anyone who was non-white. As far as I could tell, it was only men that he confronted. So he was taking the safest route there, which is like beyond gutless in my view, but and sidestepping the issue. But this is the propaganda thing. Did you know that all rapists are straight white males? Did you know that all men who oppress women are straight white males? Did you know that all racists are straight? Only straight white males are evil in any and all categories, and none of the minority who are the primary offenders. None of them somehow feature in these things. So it was very disingenuous for this British politician to play that. But he just looked like some punk-ass, stupid, university student, like a student politician or something. It was really pathetic, in my opinion. Now, one day he may be a senior decision-making politician. I'm thinking, holy crap. Now, he's probably better than a lot of them there, but given that, his that's how bad things are. I mean, holy fuck. But I just wanted to talk about this general sort of thing of do you call it community standards, moral standards, equality before the law? Where is the law applied equally, to anyone, and anybody? Is it blind to race and gender and this sort of thing? So I would argue that moral standards have declined from a government level right through to at the lowest level. Now, it's a bit hard to tell whether moral standards, the decline in them, and when I say moral, I'm talking the idea that people think they should be paying for their fares, that police should have bring charges equally against all citizens who break the law and so on. Should judges imprison equally and prosecutors take the cases equally, because none of that's happening. So the moral decline is across the board, up and down, left and right. It's three-dimensional. It's 360 degrees. The moral decline is everywhere, but it's happening in ways that are probably not necessarily visible, or happening in slow motion, and thus they're quite insidious. Happening without you knowing, without you realizing, like a slow drip that wears away or a slow flame that wears away the rope that holds the safety device in place. So now in Australia, there's and I've organised this for elder relatives and so on their behalf, is you can get a public transport pass that gives you if you're a retired senior citizen and that sort of thing, you can get effectively 90% off on your travel fares. So now this is for people, sort of retired people over the age of 65 who may have infirmities and this sort of thing. So it's very much to help the elderly, the infirm, and all that sort of stuff. And it's just there is a temporary pass that people can get if they're unemployed, so they can travel to interviews or something like that. So that there's those sorts of things that are available. but they're only temporary. But anyway, this special pass that's given only to senior citizens. I take the public transport rarely, but I do sometimes. And particularly if I've got to travel in peak hour, it's almost not worth driving, the aggravation. So I might as well just take public transport, the train mainly from where I am, but or it's not close to where I am. I've got, I don't know, 7-8 mile journey or something to get to the train. But I was standing waiting for somebody to come. I was traveling with my wife actually, and so I was waiting outside the station turnstiles, and there were a mass of brown and a few black, mostly brown people were coming through. They were young. They were, I don't know, in their 30s, younger still, 20s, 30s, that sort of thing. And they all had this. All of them had this senior citizen, because you got to do a tap, electronic tapping, and all of them had this senior citizen discount thing. So and all of them had it. It wasn't just like one or two or something. They all had it. They all arrived en masse and they all had it. And now they all appeared to be working and so on. So why were they entitled to that? So anyway, they now even if you are a senior citizen, you're only it's rationed the use of this 90% off discount travel card. You're only allowed to make, I think it's three journeys a week, something like that. But these people, they looked, they didn't look like 3 day a week sort of people, 3 journeys a week. So I was having a look at this and then made some basic, inquiries, and found that if you're a recent migrant, you can claim to be a refugee. Now, there's no proof or evidence needed. You need to claim it, assert it, state it, allege it. So you can say, well, I'm a refugee, and then they automatically issue with one of these senior citizen cards. Now, senior citizens who've lived here all their life, or nearly all their, I don't know, and they're entitled to this card. Why, or this discount voucher thing? Why is it being given to people that? Well, they just need to say, well, I'm a refugee. Bingo, done. Not where's your evidence, where's your proof, where's your no, done. You've got that card. So now amongst these, and this is where the moral standards decline comes in. I wouldn't think of gaming the system. I wouldn't think. And I wouldn't think it right to place a fiscal burden on the taxpayer, that is my fellow citizens, that if I was of a certain age, I'd go in and just like I'm a refugee, or try and falsify documents to say that I was a senior citizen or something. That type of stuff. No, I'm only a few years away from that, by the way. But the point is that it wouldn't cross my mind to do this. Yet these recent third world people, they have no compunction in that idea. They've got no concept of civic duty, civic obligation. It's something that's unknown to them, completely unknown to them. So they can come to a first world country and say, well, they're rich, and the activists and the radicals and the NGO, race grifters have said that the only reason these white people are rich is because they stole everything from us. So if I steal a bit of it back, hey, what's the problem? So they falsely claim to be refugees when they're not. Now, this is part of a moral standard, whereas a citizen, some white people I'm sure would game the system, but for mine, why should I do that? I'll be entitled to it when the time comes, and therefore at that time I'll make the claim, because those are the rules, those are the standards, and the idea of cheating and gaming the system and subverting it is not something that I would think of doing. It's not something I think is a good idea, not something I want to do, not something I think is helpful to the society at large. So yet these people have no compunction about it. None, absolutely none. They have no civic obligation to the society. They've got no concept of society. Anything outside of the immediate blood relative family, they've got no concept of. and yet they come to the first world expecting endless handouts. Now, there are also organisations, many of them NGOs run by white people, by the way, organisations all across the West to help these people game the system, to tell them how to falsify documents, falsely claim to be refugees, falsely claim to be escaping oppression from wherever. So there's a vast array of NGOs, all posing as charities, taxpayer exempt, that help these people get all sorts of handouts and benefits the rest of us can't get, or we believe it's improper or inappropriate to falsely make these claims, such as claiming to be a refugee or something like that. Now, if these people are traveling every day to work, for example, they'll be paying a minimum of $60 a week, so in train fares. But with these special, hitherto senior citizen discount cards, that they can be paying 10% of that. So that means they're being subsidised to the tune of $50+ a week by the taxpayer. Now, there's been a few little interviews that you can find online in Australia where the local officials in Sydney, for example, said, well, the amount of people travelling on the trains has doubled, but the amount of revenue collected, that is people paying their tickets, has only increased by 20%. So you don't need to be a mathematical genius to say that 4 of every 10 people are not paying for their fares. On top of that, you've got a large cohort of these mass migrants that are falsely claiming to be refugees, every single one of them that I saw going through the thing. So revenues, as the use of the public service, in this case trains, increases, the amount of revenue actually declines. So the taxpayer has to fill the gap there. The taxpayer is overwhelmingly straight white males that are net contributors to the taxation system. So therefore, you have this perverse situation where straight white males are being stolen from through the taxation system to subsidise people who have not the slightest compunction about gaming, subverting and ripping off the system. But this is an overall decline in moral. Why do the politicians just allow this? You only need to allege you're a refugee. Is the cost of determining whether someone is or isn't a refugee even more expensive than giving them the free travelling? Like, are there other factors at play here? But it would seem that these people have to be given an easy free ride. Why? If they have to be given such an easy free ride, which is so expensive, why bring them here? Why not bring people that will make a net contribution? These people are not contributing. The jobs they work at tend to be the lower paid jobs where they're not making a net contribution anyway. Therefore, again, the taxpayer is quite the subsidizer. Now, the business lobby said, well, we need cheap labour. But then the losses associated with that are all socialised. So business can get the cheap labour, which helps their bottom line. But the cost of gaining that bottom line benefit is transferred onto the taxpayer. So there are moral declines and decline of standards altogether. Now, and I've watched the ticket inspectors come onto the trains, and I've seen them, and my ticket gets inspected. But when a white person hasn't paid their ticket, then there's a bit of a scene, and the ticket inspector gets on the radio, and a couple of heavy security dudes appear, and they demand the person gives their like details and address and this, that, and the next thing. So, but when a brown person does it, they just say, I don't speak the English. Oh, well, that's naughty. Don't do it again. So the enforcement levels are very different. If a white person jumps the turnstile at the train to not pay, then security will go after them. But if the brown person does it, they can, who cares? So they're clearly under instructions to operate differently. And this is this two-tier justice that's appearing all over the Western world, by the way, so that only law-abiding white people are to be held to a high standard of accountability. Everyone else gets a pass. So I would argue that the non-paying of, in this case, public transport, train fares, is certainly an issue, but it's representative of a wider moral decline across vast areas. And that British politician only going after straight white males was I think, a disgusting and disgraceful stunt. And he should have gone after the real issue, which is mass migration and the problems that it causes. You've been with Tacitus today, your Pushback channel. Thank you for listening.